Hogstyle.
Hey guys, how's it going? Did anyone else get a sponsorship from a beer company today that, doesn't rhyme with your name, but it was, funny nonetheless that a beer company sponsored you just because you complained about another beer company? Because Taylor Heineke did. So that's the late-breaking news, folks, out there. Heineke has been pitching himself to Heineken for about a week now in press conferences, and he keeps getting spurned, but then Bud Light comes along and goes ahead and gives Heineken an endorsement, and they're calling it Bud Lighteke or something like that in the ads. It's very weird. It doesn't work as a rhyme, but...
No, I don't drink alcohol, right. So forgive me for asking this, but is Heineken like a snobby kind of beer?
No, they're owned by the same people. They're both owned by InBev.
Are they? Okay.
Heineken's made in Europe. Heineken would have been snobby like in your grandparents' generation when there were only 5 beers out there.
When there were only 5
Because I was wondering if it just doesn't make sense for them to have a football player as a spokesman.
No, I'm sure Bud Light probably gets more football drinking than Heineken, but Bud Light, in my opinion, is for women and children. So I don't know. That's my beer thing. So
hey, I don't remember the last time I had a Bud Light, man.
You were probably underage because it's meant for children.
Yeah, Bud Lights, I don't know about those. Coronas and Heinekens have always been my go-tos if I drink beer, but yeah, it was Heinekens. I do like them. I ain't gonna lie to you. I like them.
It's fine.
I guess mine's Sunkist and Mountain Dew, but I'm in another world.
Heineken would be like Squirt Light, Steve. Or I'm sorry, Bud Light would be like Squirt Light for you, Steve. That's the.
Oh, see, that's ooh.
Yeah.
See, now you're talking my language, and now I get it, and yeah, that's no good.
Right.
That wouldn't work.
Yes,
it's like Diet Squirt.
Diet Squirt. That's what it is. Diet Squirt. Squirt Zero. I don't know if that even exists.
That's just some weird.
Yeah.
There's some weird oxymoron in there. Squirt Zero.
There really is. All right, guys. While I thought we'd bring that to the table. Right off the bat. It's a weird sponsorship. People will get a kick out of it for a few days, and then it'll all get dropped. I'm sure. Especially if Heineken has a bad game this week. So why don't we just dive right in? This is our preview game for the Washington playing the Bills. I believe right now, Jamal, correct me if I'm wrong, we're 8-point underdog, 8.5-point underdog.
It was 9 earlier in the week.
9. Yeah, it started out at 10. I think before we even played, or maybe right after we played the Giants, and it's down to 7.5 right now. 7.5 as it stands on a Wednesday night.
Oof, that's a steep one to cover. Why don't we start with the Bills' offense versus this defense in Washington? Because I think that's going to be a nightmare, guys. Now, the good news. Buffalo's offense has been a little rough, right? Josh Allen is looking like Josh Allen of 2 years ago, not of last year. Steve, do you have his numbers? Do you want to go through those first?
Yeah, absolutely. Josh Allen had 4 years in college of not being able to complete a pass or even hit the broadside of a barn. And then he had 2 years in the NFL in which he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn.
Right.
Averaging 53% completion percentage as a rookie, 59% in 2019. Took a huge leap forward for a variety of reasons last season, 69%. Well, guess what? In 2 games here, including a 28-0 destruction of the Miami Dolphins. 35-0 destruction of the Dolphins. 56% completion percentage, only 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's got a quarterback rating that's in the toilet. So this is, so far, not the Josh Allen of last year. And it makes you wonder, if I was a Bills fan, what I would wonder is he really regressing to the mean here? And what I've noticed from the Bills this year, Jamal, I'm curious about your opinion, is he's missing everything deep. Wide open, anything that's beyond shallow mid, he's just missing it. And that's where all the That's where the bad seems to be for him, which sort of tracks what he did in college.
Well, I am for sure. Jesus Christ, Dakota! I just saw all the scratches that she left on my arm. I am not one to fake things, and I haven't been able to finish Buffalo's game against the Dolphins at all. I haven't been able to finish it. I watched like the first quarter to this point as we're recording, but I think from what everybody's saying, not only in Washington world but also Buffalo world, is that Josh Allen hasn't looked that great as a passer. And it's wild in a sense that you kind of trying to, like, from a standpoint of analyzing the game, you're trying to see that middle ground. Like, it's not as bad as they always say, and it's not as great as it always is. Like, it's always been that point, and you try to find the middle ground with a person who's had the 2 years that he's had prior to 2020, and then he took off in 2020, 70-something% completion percentage. And you're trying to figure out, like, how good is Josh Allen. So when you look at how he's playing these first 2 games, and understanding that his accuracy isn't really there right now, my concern is he's looking for that one game to try to get him back on track. And while Washington has an opportunity in front of them, Josh Allen and company has an opportunity in front of them, and how they're facing Washington this week in terms of getting back right. And for me, with Josh Allen, I do accept and do come to grips that he's not having the best of weeks or best of seasons to start off, but I think he's dangerous, man. I seen a couple plays in that first quarter by itself. One play in the first quarter to Emmanuel Sanders where he stayed in the pocket for about 3 seconds, located that man deep, threw a bullet down the field like 30, 40 yards, right on the money to Emmanuel Sanders. And it told me, like, regardless of the struggles that he's going through, you give him that opportunity, you give him those one-on-ones, you give him those opportunities to go to the better receivers down the field. All of that stuff that you talked about pregame is going to be forgotten. You can't allow those opportunities. And so that's where I'm at with Josh Allen, man. He's just looking for that one moment to get back right.
Yeah, he's not wholly unlike Daniel Jones in that regard. Because Daniel's inconsistent. He's inaccurate sometimes, but he has his moments,
right?
Where he looks good. I don't think Josh is near as good a runner as Daniel Jones is, but in terms of sort of, I guess, his performance, for lack of a better term, yeah, I think it's pretty similar. And I agree with what Jamal is saying. That's my big fear. Giving this guy one opportunity to get right. Mm-hmm. And we've had a defensive front that hasn't got a ton of pressure on quarterbacks. Even with the Giants having problems in their offensive line, they still did not get a ton of pressure on Daniel Jones at times. And now we're facing a much better Buffalo Bills team. So, yeah, I think Jamal hit it on the head, actually. It's my big fear is you give Josh Allen the moment he needs to get right, because they have a ton of talent around him. Guess what?
Yeah, they really do. I mean, if you look at the roster they've built around him, these receivers, I mean, I know Stephon Diggs is in his prime. They've done something interesting here where it's Diggs and then they surround him with these really good veteran guys who are past their prime, but they were at one point, top tier receivers. Beasley was a Pro Bowler, I believe, at one point. Emmanuel Sanders was, I think, considerable. He was maybe a top 5 at one point, right? Like, he was a really great receiver at one point in his career. Not anymore, because he's 34. He's getting up there. But it's an interesting way to go about building a receiving core where you're just building with all these veteran guys and surrounding, a nucleus of a young quarterback and one really great prime receiver with veterans, which is kind of the opposite of what a lot of teams do now. Most teams they'll stick with rookie contracts. So it's kind of an interesting, different approach there. But that's a tough assignment for this defensive group here.
It is. I mean, Stephon Diggs is obviously one of the best receivers in the NFL. We're going to have to look to William Jackson. I would expect we're going to see a lot of one-on-one press man between William Jackson and Stephon Diggs, throughout this game. Cole Beasley, the little slot guy, he's always dangerous. He's burned Washington before when he was in Dallas.
Sure.
At times. And this is when these slot guys, this is when you're getting into linebackers covering them a lot of times with these dig routes and stuff. They run out of the slot. And we all know how Washington's linebacker core has looked. So that
Terrible
scares me.
coverage.
And Emmanuel Sanders, yeah, he's old, but he is a pro, you know. So, but I definitely think it's the Stephon Diggs show, and the stats prove this out. You know, he's already had 21 targets, 13 receptions, 21 targets. So,
yeah, I mean,
2 games, despite a bad Josh Allen.
The other thing, of course, is their running back, Singletary. He's been very good so far, Jamal. I'm really impressed with how he did in that start of the Miami game. Even he had that one big burst for what was it like? It was half the field.
Yeah, like 50 yards untouched, like right up the middle. Yeah, I mean the thing, like you all already spoke on it, right? The Bills have done a good job over the past couple of years. It's 2021. Since like 2019, just building around Josh Allen. It started with Cole Beasley, and then you brought in Stephon the year in 2020, and then this year you bring in Emmanuel Sanders, but also you bring in Devin Singletary in between to kind of help him out in the run game, and then also Matt Breida. People kind of forget about Matt Breida now. He hasn't been like somebody who pops off statistically this year, but he's a talented back, a very strong back and very fast back. He played a lot with the San Francisco 49ers, if you all are forgetting who he is. But he's that type of guy with Buffalo who's just looking for his fair share of touches. He hasn't been able to get that yet. I don't know what the story is behind it. Maybe he has been a person who's been injured before, so maybe he may be dealing with some things. I don't know. But they're building around Josh Allen. And point blank, period, fellas, this offense moves with Josh Allen by himself. Like, that is the offense. And one aspect that we're not talking about right now that needs to be talked about probably way more than him as a passer is him as a runner. Washington against the Daniel Jones and Justin Herbert, if he was mobile, they can't stop mobile quarterbacks. This has been years long of issues, them being able to stop mobile quarterbacks. It's been one of their Achilles heels. And Josh Allen, if he's smart, and not just him, but his coordinator, if they're smart, man, they're understanding that I'm going to go and challenge you the same way that the Giants challenge you until you show you can stop it. And I'm going to call these read options, these run pass options, and I'm going to force that linebacker or that DB who's going to be on the edge, I'm going to force him to make a decision on taking the running back or taking the quarterback. And I'm going to use this all up and down the field until you show me that you can stop it.
Yeah, it certainly is one of the Washington's Achilles heels over the years. I mean, the other Achilles heel being that they've been a total train wreck of a franchise in every fashion for about 20 years. But that's another story, I guess. In terms of Singletary's numbers, this year, 24 attempts, 154 yards, 6.4 yards per attempt. The run that Alex mentioned was 46 yards last week against the Bills. He had another one, 25 yards against the Steelers. So averaging almost 6.5 yards to carry. Josh Allen on the ground, 14 for 79, long of 15, averaging 5.6 yards per attempt. So there's your running game right there.
Right.
Matt Breida, hadn't done anything yet. Basically, 4 carries, 4 yards, but he does have talent. Yes, that's Washington has a problem with mobile quarterbacks. Newsflash, details at 11. What can they do about it? Probably nothing, because they did a horrible job against Daniel Jones, and we knew it was coming. Everybody knew it was coming. They couldn't stop him. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know why it would be any different for Josh Allen.
I really think when it comes to what the defense is going to have to do this week, you're not going to be able to stop all these weapons. You're not going to be able to stop you can't just shut down this offense. They need to kind of figure out, what do you want to stop? Like, pick your thing that you're going to focus on, that you're hoping to at least shut them down in some facet. And personally, I think their number one priority should be stopping the run game here. With Allen not being great right now percentage-wise, it makes more sense to try and focus on, shutting down Singletary as best they can, and going from there, kind of try and make them one-dimensional a little bit here.
It's kind of strange that this offense hasn't been that good. I mean, they only scored 16 points against the Steelers, but it hasn't been a turnover thing. You know, there's only one. They only lost one turnover in that game, 2 in the Dolphins game, which they won 35-0.
Yeah, and the turnover in the Steelers was a fumble on a punt.
Yeah, right. And so it's really been a Josh Allen can't complete the pass thing.
Right.
More than anything else, that's been the problem. And so while I agree with you that they need to focus on the run, that scares me less than Josh Allen getting healthy against a defense that doesn't get pressure, and gives them all day long. That scares me more. So my view is a little bit different than Alex's. My view is, because I know how the Steelers stopped them. How the Steelers stopped them is they didn't blitz much.
Mm-hmm.
They got pressure from their defensive line, and they dropped 7 back in coverage, a lot. And Josh Allen, I don't think you can fix your accuracy overnight. I mean, he somehow did it last year, but to me, I think this game, more so than the other 2 games, it's really up to the defensive line to do their thing that they're supposed to be doing and get pressure on them without without safety blitzes, without a bunch of linebackers blitzing. They need to pressure this guy so Washington can have a full zone in the secondary. That's what I think the key to stopping the Bills' offense is.
Jamal, what about you? What approach would you take if you were Jack Del Rio?
Well, I mean, like I mentioned, it's trying to negate the run game, understanding that Josh Allen is that offense. You got to try and eliminate the aspect of the run. You have to understand that he is a scrambler. Like he has a strong arm, but he will take off. He can scramble, and he's big enough where he can take the hits, get back up, and run 3 more times on that same drive. That doesn't really bother him. So I mean, for me, I would try and pressure him, but it's like, at what point, like, do you really pressure him? Meaning sending blitzes, not just relying on that front 4, because that's gotten these guys in trouble a lot. But at what point do you really trust your best corner against Stephon Diggs or Emmanuel Sanders? Those are 2 top tier receivers in the NFL from a route running standpoint, but also just being very aware and smart. And they'll be able to recognize blitzes and understanding the hot spots for their quarterback. So do you blitz and take that risk against those receivers and understanding that Josh Allen still has that arm to make a throw that he has to make? Or do you sit back in zone and hope that your 4 or your 5, if you want to do your 5-man fronts, gets home? Preferably, I would prefer the blitzes, but I think the more reasonable and safe approach is also probably what helps him out the most, and that's to send your 5-man fronts against Josh Allen, and then play six in coverage on the backside. So that's probably the safest way to play Josh Allen in this receiving core.
Well, yeah, that's what I was recommending too. Because Washington secondary, I mean, William Jackson has had his moments. And when you're playing press man all the time, you're going to get beat sometimes. I mean, it's inevitable. But I don't think Kendall Fuller's been that good this year, and I don't think Benjamin St. Juste is. I mean, I have nothing against him, but he's looked like a rookie, looked like a young player. He still needs to learn at times. So I'm not sure I really trust this secondary to go, other than William Jackson, to go one-on-one with these guys, to have more blitzes and only 4 or 5 in the secondary. Mm-hmm. I really think in this case, as Jamal said and as I said earlier, that I think the secondary is more important. And listen, Chase Young, Montez Sweat, you guys, I mean, you've gotten all the hype. It's time to prove it now.
Yeah, it really is. All right, let's switch sides, talk about the offense. And I'm going to start with something I picked up on when watching the first 2 games Buffalo played. And this is a bit of a bold statement, I think, but Taylor Heineke is a better quarterback than either or any of the 3 quarterbacks that Buffalo's faced so far. Ben Roethlisberger, shell of what he was. He should have retired 4 years ago at this point. He looks like garbage when he's out there. And the Dolphins, Tua got hurt pretty early on. He's been struggling a bit, in his still young career. And who was it? Jacoby Brissett? Nothing special there. So I'm not saying Heineke's elite, but he's better than anything they've faced. So that's going to be my bold statement to start talking about our offense versus the Bills' defense.
It's all on him.
Yeah.
It's all on Heineke.
It really is.
At the end of the day, it's all on Heineke. It really is. I think he's become somehow, miraculously, the heart and soul of this team. Buffalo's defense has had a ton of success, by the way.
They got a lot of speed on that defense.
They do, and it's not just the 35-0 shutout of the Dolphins. They actually played pretty well against the Steelers. Steelers only scored 23 points on them.
Right.
So this all is on Taylor Heineke, I think. The Bills' defense has been holding opposing running backs just 3.6 yards per carry. It might not be a big running opportunity for Daniel Gibbs or Antonio Gibson. Plus, he's got a shoulder injury.
Yeah.
He's still on the injury list. By the way, since I'm thinking about it, injuries, Washington, the only two are Ioannidis and Gibson. Ioannidis didn't practice Wednesday. He's got a knee. Antonio Gibson with the shoulder was limited. And then on the Bills, it's Cole Beasley had a rest day. Lutulele.
They had a pretty long list.
Defensive tackle with the groin.
Oh, Star Lutulele.
Micah Hyde was out.
Was hilarious.
Micah Hyde, neck problem, limited. So, yeah, they have a couple of people out. Levi Wallace, quality corner, knee problem. So they do have some injuries. But, I think this game is going to be as goes Taylor Heineke, as goes Washington in this game.
Yeah. Jamal, what do you think about the offense and what can they do?
I don't think the Antonio Gibson injury is I don't think that's a big deal. I also don't think that it's not going to be completely on Taylor. From a player standpoint, it's not going to be completely on Taylor. I do think that opportunity in the ground game is going to be essential. Now, the important thing to note, y'all touched on it, right? But the important thing to note, let me go pull it up one more time on my end. Buffalo Bills is the second best pass defense in the NFL, and the seventh best rush defense in the NFL. Overall, they're second in yards and second in points. Regardless of what that shutout did to bolster their stats, it doesn't matter. They still played good defense against the Steelers in Week 1. And they shut a professional football team out. Jacoby Brissett is a backup, but he's not a slouch. He started close to 20 games in the NFL already. He knows how to move the ball. But with that being said, the key would try to be establishing some type of ground game. I think the best thing for Washington, these two games, the first two games that they played, is that they have shown the capability of having success in the ground game in terms of sustaining and continuous rushes and rush attempts throughout the game. That's a different story. And also another complex thing, because they've used the short pass game as an extension of the run, especially with Adam Humphries and J.D. McKissick and things of that nature. So there's a lot of things that they've done to try and keep the ground game alive, quote unquote ground game. So it's going to come down to more people outside of Heineke. Again, Humphrey's going to play a role. Antonio Gibson's going to play a role. But also being able to block up front. That's going to be a really big key for these guys, and understanding if they can move the ball or get some traction in the trenches, they'll be able to manage a hostile environment and take the load off of Taylor Heineke in some big moments.
I mean, I hear you about the passing yards and all that, and you're right. I mean, they're second in the NFL in passing yards surrendered. I just don't think it's going to be a very successful day on the ground. Hopefully, I'm wrong. I just don't see it. So I guess I see the game a little bit differently than you do. I think in my view, it needs to be Heineke that opens up the offense, and if that works, then I think later in the day, later in the game, rather, maybe you'll see the ground game start to open up. So I guess I view it a little bit differently.
I mean, the only reason why I think it's like something there is the fact that they played Buffalo. I mean, excuse me, they played Buffalo. They played Pittsburgh, and then they played the Miami Dolphins, two teams who really don't care about running the football anyway. Like you're not really gonna really see that many opportunities from the Pittsburgh in terms of them being dedicated to the ground game or trying to have a balanced offense. And then Miami, like the hell was going on? Like what the hell was going on? That's all I can really say about them losing the way they did against the Buffalo Bills. Some people when I was looking up just like the reactions from both sides of the game, Buffalo and Miami, some people thought that Miami just quit when Tua went out. So like you just kind of you don't really know, and I think that opportunity to run the game, run the ball against a team like that, given that Washington has shown success and they're not afraid to run it. The question is, will they? But they aren't afraid to do it, and they're successful in some aspects of it. I think that that's going to be their opportunity to try to establish a level playing field and trying to get a win in Orchard Park.
Yeah, I mean, look, they can't abandon the run. I mean, if nothing less, you have to run it regularly just to kind of give your defense a break and take time off the clock, that kind of old school, conservative play calling, that they're going to need to do some of that to help this defense out. So I think you're right about that. I'm wondering with the run game, we know Gibson's not right. He's been kind of battling injuries even before the season started. I'm wondering if they need to put Patterson in for this one a lot more. He's a physical runner. I wonder if his being smaller will help, negate this defense that loves to blitz the edges. He could get lost in the pile a little bit more that way. And by the way, that is a big concern for me with Heineke too. This defense was coming pretty much unchecked throughout that Miami game, around the tackles on either side. And we know this team's been struggling here in Washington with their tackle play on run or on pass blocking. I wonder if they need to, kind of plan for that a little bit more this week.
Well, I mean, certainly given Taylor Heineke's injury history also.
Right, that doesn't help.
You don't want to get him hit too much because then you're down to
Kyle Allen.
I guess healthy Kyle Allen. I mean, he's really healthy. Who knows? You're not wrong. I mean, the idea of keeping pressure off the quarterback is a good thing. Jared Allen isn't the greatest blocker in the world.
No.
He didn't do it in college, really. So, I mean, I think that Washington's offense is better when, as you said 2 weeks ago, Alex, Gibson and Jarrett Patterson can split the carries a little bit, here and there. You can't give Antonio Gibson 25 carries a game, No. Not that, I mean, they only had 20, 2 weeks ago. But point is, yes, they could use Jared Allen more. I hope you guys are right. All I'm saying, Jared Patterson, sorry. All I'm saying is I just think it's going to be a tough sledding in this regard. That's all my point is. And so, to me, I think the key is Taylor Heineke having a good day, which opens up the offense, which will loosen up the run game a little bit. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I think we all accept this is going to be a tough sledding game. And in fact, I went back and double-checked. When we did our season predictions, all of us predicted this was going to be a loss. Anyone who submitted a prediction said it's going to be a loss. It was unanimous across. I think we have 10 people who sent something in from our regular group of,
I mean, you're playing the team that was in the AFC Championship game at their home.
Right.
I mean, it's not, I mean, the line of, what was the line, Jamal, right now?
7.5, we're saying, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair line.
Mm-hmm.
Washington hadn't looked that good this year. They barely squeaked by. They should have lost to the Giants, truthfully. Should have lost that game. But for the Giants' stupidity. So, I mean, I don't blame them for having a 7.5 line. I'd probably make it bigger.
Well, It was bigger. That's the thing. That's what it started. It started at 10.
I'm looking at our written preview. Yeah, I have 9 down here as the early line because I checked it a couple of days ago. But I'll change
it's gotten like half a point narrower a day or something like that.
Of course, that's also Vegas. The Vegas bookies trying to, gin up some betting.
Right, exactly.
So they'll change the
basically
line to
that it's a
maximize.
science behind it for sure. That's why I was getting at. Like, it's a science behind
Yeah.
it. So,
Right. It's a science of also how do we get everybody's money. It's not a, that's the trick. All right, why don't we go ahead and just do our Ross prediction or our game predictions for this one?
Oh boy.
I will go ahead and go first. Give you guys a minute. I don't see this one going well for Washington. Like I said, I think Heineke is, and this offense is probably better than what they faced in Pittsburgh, what they faced with Miami. So I think Washington puts up some points, but it's not going to be enough. I'm going to go 35-24 Buffalo win.
Oh, man, you had 1 point off of what I was going to say. I'm going to go with my prediction anyway. I was going to say 34-24 because I think the Bills are going to be able to put some points. I think Washington proved last week that they can score, some points. Unlike last year's offense, it just no matter what happens, they weren't going to score points except for that one Dallas game.
Yeah.
And that has been true for years, actually. But so, yeah, I think they'll put up some points. But at the end of the day, Buffalo in Buffalo, I think it's a bit too much.
So last week I thought it was going to be a defensive game. I thought it was going to be a defensive game between the Giants and Washington, given that these guys were in position to kind of right the ship in both those strengths of the team I felt was the defense. I was wrong. It ended up being a very high-scoring game, 31-29 or whatever the hell the score was, 30-29, whatever. I think it's going to be a defensive game this week. I stick by that. There's a lot of Buffalo's defense I respect and I think it's good, but at the same time, Washington is in a position, again, like we talked about earlier today, is in a position where they need to kind of get right. And given that Buffalo's offense isn't clicking on all cylinders right now, I think they find the way, Washington finds the way to get right against this offensive unit, whether it's with pressure or just being sound and a little bit more disciplined after these few blunders the past week. So with that being said, I think Buffalo wins, but I think it's probably like a 21-17 game or 24-17 game.
Okay.
So
Closer.
Yeah, it's a little bit closer. In my head, Washington covers. But yeah, it's probably like 21 or 24-17, something like that.
Okay. All right, guys. We don't normally do this, but I asked our readers for questions, and we got one guy who sent a question, and I thought it works at the end of the show here. Since we all say Buffalo's going to win, will a sound win by Buffalo over Washington be what this team needs to get them back to reality and clearly show the team who they actually are?
Repeat that.
So,
repeat that, because I may have misinterpreted what he said in the beginning. He said,
okay, could a sound win by Buffalo be what this
Buffalo,
team needs to get back to reality and a clear showing of where the team actually is?
Well, I mean, who is the team really, though? That's my question. Okay, so they get pasted by Buffalo, and I think probably what he's getting at is people will stop claiming this defense is an elite defense and one of the best. And that's probably where he's going with this, I would assume. I'm not going to put words in a man's mouth, but in that regard, perhaps so.
Sure.
But that having been said, this fan base can be very hot or cold. Born from decades of tragedy.
Yeah.
Right.
So, what I can in response to that is, I think if they get pasted by Buffalo, yes, I think the fan base at least will start to rethink where they place this defense in the NFL. I don't think it's going to do much on the national stage just yet. It's too early in the season for that. But the fan base will be all over the defense for sure.
I wonder about in-house, too, with this defense. Well,
Ron's already been talking about the defense needs to do better.
Right.
So.
That's true.
I think Steve raised a good point. And what is this team right now? I think the question was kind of asked from a perspective where he had his mind made up. And he believes that the team isn't, as it's not as good as people are hyping it up to be. Whatever, in whatever degree that he believes it is, I don't know. That's all on him. But I think put it this way: Ron Rivera called this game a measuring stick for Washington, and you say that's a measuring stick because you recognize where Buffalo is. They have AFC title aspirations. They are one of the best teams to be in the AFC. I actually have them coming out of the AFC in general, just making it to the Super Bowl. So Ron Rivera sees this as a measuring stick. The question is, where does Ron Rivera view his team? Where does he view the Washington football team? And like, depending on how he felt when he called the Bills a measuring stick, that kind of gives you your answer. Like, if you get beat down in front of the national or the perceived AFC title contenders, then what does that tell you about where your team is competing for championships? You're not there yet. You're nowhere close if you get beat down. And it's not going to be pretty. Put it this way. We kind of know how Washington football is and how the fan base is. It's not going to be pretty. You're losing by 2+ possessions against the Buffalo Bills, no matter what people perceive how winnable this game could be, because there's a lot of people who think that Washington's the underdog who has a really good chance of winning. If you get blown out, you aren't close, and you're going to be mad at yourself for thinking that you weren't that close from a fan base perspective.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's going to be more of a reality check for fans. I've always said every once in a while you need a good ass kicking to remind yourself who you are. So I kind of like this guy's question. So that's why I thought I'd also give it to you.
I mean, the very nature of the word fan,
yeah, fanatic,
is that it's derived from fanatic, and then you get the Twitter crowd,
right?
Which, although I'm not on Twitter anymore, if you're following us and all the Washington press and all day long, you're even more of a fanatic than normal, which I applaud, and I'm happy that there are people out there. You guys listen to us are fanatics,
right?
For example. But the nature of being a fanatic, I think, is that you overvalue and overhype your team early in the year, every single year. And so from that respect, if the guy is saying, look, if they get pasted by Buffalo, is it going to have everybody have a coming to Jesus, moment about the team? Yeah, probably. I don't think the national media is going to be ready to throw in the towel on the defense just yet.
No, I don't think the national media doesn't know what they're doing most of the time. So
that's true in media in general.
Yeah. All
forms of media.
All right, guys, I think that should wrap up this show. We'll see how it goes. It will either be a hey, okay, that's done type post game, or we'll be ecstatic. If they
prove us wrong, Washington.
Yeah, if somehow Washington pulls out an upset. All right, guys, we will talk to you after that on Sunday. I hope you enjoyed the game.